Okay, I'm having a little trouble advancing the slide here. Um, there we go. Okay. Um, I wanted to mention our Africana Studies department here at Georgia State. We have a really vibrant department downtown, and we also have a pathway here at Perimeter College. So you can, if you're interested in learning about Black history, Black culture, Black arts, all the things we're going to be talking about in the symposium this week, the Africana Studies Department is the place to go. So we have a pathway here at Perimeter College, and then downtown they have a bachelor's, they have a Master of Arts, and a graduate certificate in Africana Studies, and they have a bunch of wonderful faculty downtown and here at Perimeter who do classes and all sorts of topics related to Africana Studies. So I just encourage you to go to the website, go to the department page, and look up information on Africana Studies. If you're an undergraduate, you can major in it, and you can also minor in Africana Studies too. So it's just a wonderful major and a very vibrant discipline, and I just wanted to mention them since this is a Black History Symposium. Okay, now, without further ado, let me go ahead and get down to business here and introduce our speaker. It's really my distinct honor to introduce Alvin Blount. Alvin is a native of Augusta, Georgia, and he's a learning and engagement librarian here at Georgia State University's Clarkston campus. He received the Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Music degrees from Tuskegee University and Mercer University, respectively, and later received a Master of Music and Master of Science Information Sciences degrees from the University of Tennessee. Go Vols, right? He has served as a music director and organist in Episcopal and Roman Catholic dioceses in Georgia and Tennessee for over 30 years. During his tenure as director of music and worship at St. Mary on the Hill Catholic Church, which is in Augusta, he produced recordings of the parish and contemporary choirs of St. Mary's and directed them on pilgrimages to cathedrals in Ireland and Italy, where he had the opportunity to sing in St. Peter's Basilica, which is, in Rome, on the Feast of Christ the King, celebrated by none other than Pope John Paul II. That was in 1999. His solo recording of organ works, Spiritual Pipes, is dedicated in loving memory to his mother, Myrtle Terry Blount. Alvin has performed in such venues as the Cathedral of St. Philip in Atlanta, the Church Street UMC Master Arts Series in Knoxville, St. John's UMC Concerts with a Cause in Augusta, Mercer University in Macon, National City Christian Church in Washington, D.C., and St. Thomas Church, Fifth Avenue in New York. That's a lot of performances. He has also served as a clinician at the Swanee Church Music Conference and the American Guild of Organists Southeast Region Convention. He currently serves on the alumni advisory boards of the Townsend School of Music at Mercer University and the School of Information Sciences at the University of Tennessee, where he is president-elect. An advocate for faculty and community engagement in library and information sciences, he has presented at conferences held by Duke University's Divinity School, the School of Music at the University of Florida, and the National Conference of African American Librarians. Now, in his free time, which obviously he has none, when he's not serving as library faculty member and providing outreach services at GSU's Clarkston campus, you can find Alvin freelancing on any given weekend as a substitute organist throughout the metro Atlanta, including at my church, the Episcopal Church of the Epiphany. I thought I'd mention that. So let's give a big Perimeter College welcome to Alvin Blount. Thank you.
This work?
It should be working. Oh, it's not all.
Yep. Good morning. Sorry for the, you can hear me okay? Okay, good. Just sorry for the technical difficulties, but if it weren't for the genius of Mr. Anthony Brown, you all will be going back home. So I'm so glad that he was here to help us, and thank you so much, Dr. Woodrum. Just wanted to set the stage or the tone for what we're talking about today. We're going to be discussing the evolution of the Black spiritual, how it developed the infrastructure of HBCUs. But before we do that, we need to talk about the evolution of the spiritual from antebellum up to Reconstruction to the early 20th century. And the way we set that tone is to tell you about the chain of events that took place during this particular time. So we all love a story. Um, a picture's worth 1,000 words, correct? Okay. And when you look at chattel slavery, you also think about the genocide that came with chattel slavery. And one thing about genocide is that you strip a culture of everything that they hold dear to themselves, hold dear to their hearts and their souls. But one thing that was not stripped was music. And music, was, how many of you sing while you're working in the yard or working around the house and all that type of stuff? Okay, you do that. Yeah, and sing in the shower or in the car, whatever. But music was always a part of the culture as people were working in the fields, okay? And then also another part of the culture is exactly what you see here, that religion and spirituality was extremely important to slave culture on plantations. Um, Now, you see one man here who seems to be in charge of the room. And he does own that room to a certain extent. He was probably the one who was the most literate. He is pointing at his textbook, which is probably the what? The Bible, okay. And he would be the one that would be the catalyst or the entrance to hope for the enslaved. So you will find this on a regular basis on plantation culture. Also, during on plantations, you would see this often. Brush arbors, have you heard of that? Sometimes called hush harbors. Why do you think? Secret. Okay, things being planned. So, they were down there loving and praising the Lord too, but maybe getting some other things done as well. And I ain't mad at them. So I totally get it. So this was also a part of plantation culture. Now up north, still continuing with this story, things got a little bit more sophisticated and even further down south as well. But you see here, church, which is what we call the meeting style form of architecture. And you see a section down here in the main auditorium with a horseshoe balcony. And I can promise you who was sitting down here. You can tell me. I don't know about that. People of color in the balcony. Okay. People who were not of color. And that was a problem for these two dudes here. They were best buds. This is Richard Allen, the founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is one of the oldest Black organizations in this country. And this is Absalom Jones. As I say, they were best friends. They were lay preachers or lay, now I don't know about preaching too much, but maybe lay ministers to their particular communities in St. George's Methodist Church, the oldest Methodist congregation in the United States in Philadelphia. Well, they got a little tired of being sat up there in that balcony, and I don't blame them. So they decided one day, well, we worshiping the Lord too, so we're gonna sit where we want. And they did, and they were literally manhandled and thrown out of the building. And you can see a reenactment of this on YouTube. It's very touching. And they left, their following left with them, and they formed the Free African Society, which gave rise to the AME Church and the oldest Black Episcopal Church in the country. So he was their first bishop, and he was the first Black priest. And they, of course, founded their own respective churches. I'm not sure how Mr. Jones ended up in Episcopalian, but all of that is probably another presentation. So we don't have time today. If you ever have a chance to visit Philadelphia, go to Mother Bethel first, because I know Richard Allen and his wife Sarah are buried in the crypt. But these men were self-made men. I know he had to buy himself. He had to purchase his own freedom. He had to purchase his wife's freedom. Not so sure about that. Now, that brings me to a disclaimer. The disclaimer is I am not a trained historian like this man here. Oh, and this gentleman here. I'm not a trained historian. I'm a trained musician and a trained librarian. So I've got the facts checked, but I've got some fact checkers down here that can help me, and I got no shame in asking them to help me. Okay, so things a little sophisticated, but still a rough life, especially during the, was it yellow fever? During the yellow fever particular time, during this time too. And the founding of these churches. Now, music and the spoken word might include more Anglo-Saxon type of hymnody, but also spirituals, especially here, where you had a little bit more freedom. And spirituals are religious folk songs, sometimes called Negro spirituals, Black spirituals, African American. They're deeply religious, were passed down via oral tradition, just like Gregorian chant. Gregorian chant was passed down via oral tradition as well. People were not literate, so that's the way you did it. Well, that was still going on when I grew up. I could remember right now as a kid hearing people sitting on their screened-in porches humming spirituals. You know, these older people. I had at least 10 grandmothers up and down the street, and I could just hear this as a kid. So it was still and is still a part of not just African American culture, but also American culture. One thing to keep in mind, if you don't leave with anything today but this, the Black spiritual is one of the earliest forms of American literature. The Black spiritual is one of the earliest forms of American literature, born out of chattel slavery, songs of resistance, songs of hope. They sometimes combine religious and secular texts. For instance, I met my brother the other day, gave him my right hand, but as soon as my back was turned, he took and scandalized my name. Well, I think some people probably do that when they leave church today, don't they? Okay, you know, I don't believe she wore that here this morning. After you just got through telling her, bless you, sister. Okay, but so that's what I mean about the combination of secular and religious texts. Profound theology, even with such a simple text, always longing for freedom, present or in the afterlife, strophic, meaning like a hymn, verse after verse, same music, just different verses. That's what we mean by strophic. Contrapuntal, meaning later on arrangements of spirituals would involve melody in the different voices, not just the soprano or the upper voices, but melody for the tenors and the basses sometimes. Call and response. How many of you are used to call and response in church? You're going to find that in spirituals all the time. You saw it in the plantations. Someone would sing a solo, then the backup with a group of soprano, alto, and tenor bass. So that's what we call and response. Very dramatic, not only for the voice. At one time it was, but I'm going to show you where it didn't just stick with the voice, and performed nationally and I do know how to spell, but I didn't spell well the other day. That's not internally, that should be internationally, so excuse me for that. And you will see a lot of cultural retentions in spirituals. They provide comfort and community. Now we're already up to the ending of the Civil War. Civil War ends in 1865, and the country is a complete hot mess. What is needed when you see a hot mess? People have not been allowed to practice their culture. People have not been allowed to obtain literacy. Well, they need some skills. They need industrial skills. They need literacy. They need equity and equality. And they definitely need real estate. Not a lot different from the way we live right now. That's why we're here now. We're getting skills so we can obtain literacy, equity, and equality, and hopefully get you a piece of land too. And the newly free slaves were helped by certain agencies. The Freedmen's Bureau was more of a governmental agency. The Freedmen's Aid Society was a group of abolitionists as well, who were really parts of religious denominations. And the American Baptist Home Mission Society, they were also doing their part to help educate these free people. But we had another group called the American Missionary Association, just because I always say the AMA, started in before the war in Albany, New York. And their charism was the abolition of slavery, education for the formerly enslaved, racial equality for all, not just blacks, but racial equality for all, regardless, and promote Christian values. You had to promote Christian values before you got their support. They were extremely active during the antebellum period through Reconstruction. So I would say maybe the end of the War of 1812 up until maybe the 1870s would be when they were active. Now, why are they so different from these people? Well, these folks did good work, but these people were rabid abolitionists. I'm talking rabid. They kind of thought that these people did a good job, but they didn't do enough. So they figured, well, we're going to do even more. And they went all through, especially the South. They started hundreds of normal schools. Normal schools means a normal curriculum of reading and writing, mathematics, a little bit of science, history, normal curriculum, so they could go out and teach others who had not obtained an education as well. And also plenty houses of worship. So if you go through Atlanta and you see a UCC church, United Church of Christ, they were born out of the AMA tradition. And they founded several schools that we know of that are still in operation today. Fisk University, Hampton Institute, which is now University, Tougaloo College in Mississippi. Atlanta University was once a separate institution. It was started by the AMA, then later on in the 1980s, it combined with Methodist Clark College and became Clark Atlanta University. Dillard University in New Orleans, which was a combination of Methodism and AMA or UCC. Talladega College in Alabama, and Howard University in DC. We're going to be talking a lot about what happened at Fisk, because Fisk set the tone for this type of development using the spiritual. Fisk was started in 1866, and that's their first campus. You know what this is? This is an abandoned Union Army barracks. And that is the original Fisk University campus. If you go to Nashville and you look on their campus, they've got a piece of it still preserved, which is a National Historic Site. But who wants to go to school in this for the rest of your life? Now, you know, those Union Army men just left it kind of like that, you know, and you had to live and sleep there. And, you know, now the AMA gave them some money, but they didn't say it was all free. You got to do something to bring a little bit of money in too. So this man is an AMA officer. I believe he was also a Union Army officer as well. This is George Leonard White. He was the school's, it was called the Fisk Free Colored School. But they found out that everything ain't free. Okay, it's just not possible. So he was one of those rabid abolitionists, and he came to help the school. He was also a very fine musician, but he was good with numbers. He was probably the school's business manager or accountant. And he started a singing group. They thought, well, you know what? We've got to go out and get some money to help this school. And he started this small group, which we know today, which is still in operation, called the Fisk Jubilee Singers. And these were students. The woman sitting at the organ is Miss Ella Shepherd. She was a student, but she was a very fine, classically trained musician. In addition to playing the piano, she also was an organist and also a guitarist and a very fine singer. And she was born, even though she got her training in the Cincinnati era, she was even trained by a white concert pianist who would just sneak her in the back door so nobody could see. So he could teach her, nobody could find out because it was probably against the law, correct? But she was raised in the Nashville area and she was born into slavery on a plantation called the Hermitage. Do you know what the Hermitage is? Hermitage is the plantation of President Andrew Jackson. Now, of course, slave life was not pretty anywhere, but from what I've been researching, it was definitely not pretty at the Hermitage. Her mother was told that she could purchase her freedom. When it came time to pay up, they told her, well, we changed our minds. Now, the legend has it is that she took this to, I think she was around 2 or 3 years old, and the both of them went to a river and decided we're just going to end it. Now, that happened all the time during slavery. People, you can read, Toni Morrison writes about it, all the time. She just felt, I would rather my child not live through what I have been living through. And the folklore is an older woman walked up and caught her getting ready to drown this baby and told her, don't do that because this child is going to bring so much to the world. The folklore is this woman started quoting spirituals while she was talking to Ella Shepherd's mother. And Ella Shepherd said, okay, I won't do it. Eventually, not Ella, her mama said, eventually I won't do it. Eventually, her mother was sold to another plantation in Mississippi, but Ella was not. Now, I digress. If you want a little tidbit, it is, according to the committee, Ella Shepherd is a direct descendant of somebody in President Andrew Jackson's house. Might be him, could be his brother, we're not sure. But somebody in that house is the father of that baby. And so she had this rough life. And you can't blame her mother for what she was trying to do. It was rough, it's particularly for a girl child, okay? And she just rose to prominence, probably the first Black woman to be a composer arranger in this country. The jury's still out on that, but it's not a whole lot of information to prove that she was not. So I am hoping to go to the archives at Fisk and learn more about her and her struggles. Well, they set off on this tour. They were going to they wanted, I think the figure was they wanted to raise about $20,000. Well, they toured all over the country. It was not a pretty sight. The Klan was everywhere. They performed for audiences in churches and schools. People expected them to come and sing minstrel shows. That's the only thing they thought that the Black person could do was minstrel. And these people refused to do it. They just said, we're not going to go there. So they would run into very just hard racist propaganda when they would be performing. And it is said that even some of the most racist people in those audiences would be moved to tears during performances of Black spirituals by this group. So they not only traveled all over the country, they also went abroad and traveled and sang for Queen Victoria. And she was so moved by them, they also sang for concerts for Ulysses S. Grant, Mark Twain, all kinds of dignitaries. And she was very moved by them. She even said, you all must come from a music city. Now, all the country music people in Nashville want to tell you that it's called Music City because of them. Well, it was no country music. These people brought country music to Nashville. Fisk University is the oldest school in the city of Nashville, older than Vanderbilt and Tennessee State and the rest of them. So you will find people saying, they're the reason for music, for the music culture, but the music culture started way before. So what did they do? They raised so much money. They got more than $20,000 out here and got over $100,000. You know, over $100,000 during Reconstruction, I think is a big piece of change. And they were able to secure enough funds to build Jubilee Hall, which is still standing and used today. I've got two friends who actually lived in Jubilee Hall. I want to find out why. I think I know why the walls are so thick. It's probably fireproof for good reasons. We're talking about a building that was completed by the architect Stephen Hatch, New York architect, in 1876. Beautiful building with an oil painting of the Jubilee Singers downstairs. Well, word gets out. Now the culture starts. Word gets out. Those people at Fisk raised all this money going around singing. So let's just see what they did say. I want you to listen for some cultural retentions, call and response.
Rocking Jerusalem, ringing the bells, rocking Jerusalem. Ringing the bells, oh Mary, oh Martha, oh Mary, ring them bells, oh Mary, oh Martha, oh Mary, ring them bells. Jerusalem, 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 oh, ringing them bells. Jerusalem, 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 oh, ringing them.
Word gets out that Fisk is raising a lot of money for their school. Now you remember that army barracks that the original Fisk University was in? How would you like to have this as your university under an oak tree? Emancipation Oak is still standing to this day. It's called Emancipation Oak because this is the first site where the proclamation was read. Of course, we know not the whole country got the whole message in Texas, of course, but in other places as well. But in the Chesapeake area of Virginia, it was read here. And this woman was a free Black woman who was allowed to teach the illiterate in the Chesapeake area. And I often wondered how she got away with that. I know she's a mulatto and whatnot because it was against the law, correct? But I found out that the Union Army had sort of taken, so she did sneak in through the back door some kind of way. So this is literally the first campus of Hampton University. Hampton University is a beautiful institution in the Chesapeake area of Virginia, surrounded by that water. And what the Hampton singers did, they started going all over the country and also singing all over the world and made enough money to build Virginia Hall, which is still standing and being used today. It's now Virginia Cleveland Hall because they added more to it. And what does that building sort of look like to you? Anybody? I didn't hear you. A hospital. Okay, what about the points, you know, the roof? What is that kind of, a church, maybe castle-like? Richard Morris Hunt is the architect who designed the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina. See any kind of, you see some similarities there? Okay, all right, yeah, exactly. And then so you can just see his style, all right? So they found top architects to do this type of work. And now it's a huge campus of over 4,000 students. Now, let's talk about these people that codified this music, that took this music that was brought down, passed down through oral tradition, and put pen to paper. And the works, I couldn't find a picture of their father, but their father was a very fine musician in Nashville as well. But these two guys were his sons. Well, he was the son and he was the grandson. But they were also students at Fisk University, and they also were trained musicians, musicology, conductors, classically trained musicians, and they were directors of the Fisk Jubilee Singers. The piece that they just sang for you a minute ago was arranged by the last John Work. Matter of fact, their home is still standing on their campus. Then at Hampton, we had people like R. Nathaniel Dett, who was born in Canada, spent all of his professional life mostly at Hampton, writing, conducting, helping them perform. But he spent the last years of his life at Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is one of 2 HBCUs for women still today. Then the culture is moving even further in. Even though Morehouse was founded in 1867 in my hometown of Augusta, it moved to Atlanta a little bit later on. It was still called Atlanta Baptist Institute, I believe. And the Glee Club, the famous Glee Club of Morehouse, really was not started until 1911 by this gentleman here, Kemper Harrell. He taught at Spelman and Morehouse at the same time. But the notoriety of the Glee Club got even bigger with Dr. Wendell Whalen because he just passed in the 80s. So it got bigger with him. Again, people who classically trained musicians who are getting that awareness out about HBCU culture, which is not just staying on HBCU campuses, but also going out into the United States and into the world. Same thing going on across the street at Spelman College with Dr. Willis Lawrence James. Willis Lawrence James was a musicologist, a classical violinist, and conductor, vocal coach. So he spent all of his professional life teaching and working at Spelman College. So the culture is just going further and further. By this time, it's not just happening in the private HBCUs, it's also happening in the land grant ones as well. The land grant ones didn't have to go out and beg for money as much. But if you don't let that culture, if you don't get that culture and awareness out, then nobody's going to know about you. Nobody's going to know about how talented you are, and nobody's going to send you any money. So it's now the culture is just moving further and further. It started in the church, private schools, now land grant institutions. Now, let's talk about the evolution of the spiritual. You're going to hear a lot of cultural retentions right now. This is the Glee Club of Spelman College singing Children Go Where I Send Thee, which has become such a popular arrangement for them. It would be an uprising.
God's message and the aim is a lesson in. Quit the instruments and then the message is the festering. Soulful in our hearts and it's reaching all the people. We do this in the street and underneath the people. Rather talk and talk, but the young ones want to walk. They're crawling in the dark, but my voice is a torch. Drink the milk, eat the meat, falling at the Savior's feet. The secret, take a peek. Everybody take a peek at the heart of the matter. He's the King of the Kings. Married to the church, I got the Lord of the Rings. Gold streets where I'm dancing. Father got mansions. Beauty in God's image and one that can fathom. You heard the story of Rome. Hey, so it's time to go. Hey, hey, you heard the story of Rome. Love and light, so it's time to go. Hey, you heard the story of Rome. Love and light, so it's time to go.
This is what Ivy League University.
Weren't ready for any rap, were you? What kind of cultural retentions did you see there? Speak up, I can't hear you. Call and response, what else? Rap is a part of our culture now. Drums, exactly, what else? Repetition, a little bit of gospel in there too, a little bit of vamping with the gospel. So you see the evolution is coming from strophic now styles to something else. Now we're getting a little bit more, that was dramatic, we even get more dramatic. William Levi Dawson made his fame when he started conducting at his alma mater, Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University. He was the first to take his choir to Radio City Music Hall in 1934. And you see chapels all the time. See, people didn't give you a lot of money unless you had to put a house of worship somewhere. Well, nobody was going to argue with that because back in that time it was compulsory worship too. But the dramatic using contrapuntal, strophic, call and response, all of that stuff, this man made it. I mean, now let's listen. Now, remember I told you a few minutes ago, it's not just for HBCU culture. This is the Atlanta Master Chorale, which is housed at Emory University.
I want to meet my mother. I want to meet my mother. I want to meet my mother. Gone to live with God. I want to meet my mother. I want to meet my mother. I want to meet my mother. Gone to live with God.
Characteristics. Name some. Melodies in different voices, songs of hope and songs of resistance, comforting for the community, very dramatic. So, and William Dawson's works was so big scale, you could split a choir of 100 up and just spread them all around the room and almost have a surround sound type of thing going too. Now, I told you they're not always, spirituals are not always for the voice. Now we've evolved into the Black spiritual for instruments. 3304.
Canon for Music here at the Cathedral of St. Philip, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you into the nave virtually this afternoon.
04. Go back. Let's see what that one is. Yeah. Now, tell me if you're hearing it jazz or blues with the spiritual swing low, sweet chariot. And the camera does put in. What cultural retention is there? Jazz, some blues, yeah. So now you see the evolution, the combination that's going on, and then we see the spirituals in the visual arts. This window is very important to, I think, our culture. It's called the singing window. It's in the narthex of the chapel at Tuskegee. And it was originally commissioned in 1932 and went in the original chapel, which burned in 1957. So it was recommissioned and put in the current chapel built in 1969. Now, this is a Robert R. Taylor design, and this is a Paul Rudolph design. This particular chapel is on display right now up at Yale as we speak. It's closed for renovations as well. So reason why it's so important, do you see any people, any figures in that window? See any figures? They're slaves. They're either enslaved or they're free. And the captions under their feet are of different spirituals. 11 well-known Negro spirituals are in that particular window. As a student, I used to gaze at this window before chapel every morning, just stand there and just couldn't stop looking at it. And I just wondered, it's beautiful to me, but I just wondered why it's just doing something for me. And then one of my friends said, well, of course, you see your own image. I had never seen my own image in stained glass windows before. I was raised in a church that had beautiful stained glass windows, but the angels were white, Jesus was white, everybody was white, okay? You know, I don't know who told artists that Jesus was white, because he wasn't, but that's it, and there's nothing we can do about it. But this school, even as early as 1932, thought that they would do something about that. And I found that very moving for me. And a little side note that's a lot of fun, this woman in black is the just retired president, Dr. Charlotte Morris. The woman standing next to her is Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. And she was down there speaking because her parents are alums of Tuskegee. So they had her down there, and I thought that was, but she's doing exactly what I did the whole time I was in school there. Just could not get enough of looking at that window, you know, because you see your own image. Another place where we see our own image is in spirituals and dance. Now, how many of you know anything about Alvin Ailey? How many of you have been to see Alvin Ailey? How many of you going back? You owe it to yourself if you just go back to look at Revelations only. Why is Revelation so important? All the black spirituals. The dance is beautiful to watch, the fans, the scenery, everything about it. But I have been told, and I've read, that Revelations is one of the most often performed in the world now. And I love Alvin Ailey dancers, but that's the main reason why I spend my money. Just so I can see Revelation and I can watch it over and over again. So you see what spirituals have done. Started on plantation. They've evolved from strophic pieces to more dramatic pieces, incorporating jazz, blues. Spelman even brought in rap. Now, these people sing classical literature as well. But I promise you, all of their repertoire or concerts or performances will involve some type of spiritual arrangement. What did you see about the Atlanta Master Chorale with Sooner Will Be Done? Yes, ma'am. Okay. The conductor and also the group. I saw only 2 black faces in that group. Does that tell you that this is an American art form? Okay. Yes. Strophic is the same music over and over again, different verses. Very hymn-like. Yeah, it could be 3 verses, 2, could be 7. You know, Amazing Grace, that's a strophic hymn. That's what that is. So spirituals are for everyone. It's an American art form. And I wanted you to see different types of groups. I want you to see they perform for instruments, sound was, you know, but it is what it is. Now, I want to open up the floor for any questions. Oh. Again, I'm sorry about our technical difficulties, but
We'll see if this works. Yes, it's working. Great, great. So thank you so much, Alvin. We'll go ahead. If you could, we're kind of near the end here. We'll stick around for about 5 more minutes and maybe let some folks go and then have maybe some more questions and answers and all that. But if you could, as you're kind of winding down, we have a QR code that is posted around. If you could maybe leave a little evaluation, take that survey so that we can help serve you better with the Bennekin Symposium. But real quick, I think what I'll do is just open it up for questions. If you have a question, if you would, maybe come down here and I'll give the mic to you. If I go too far back, we'll start getting feedback as I understand it. So does anybody have any questions or question they'd like to ask? Right on down and I'll let you have the mic.
Hello, I just want to say that presentation was really beautiful. I love singing and I love watching the singers. So listening to it was just like blown back. I'm curious as to why or what inspired you to look into this, look deeper into this, research this. What inspired you?
I was introduced to spirituals even as a toddler. So it's been a part of the culture, just indoctrinated by my parents and church and the community. Like I was saying earlier, even would hear people just sitting on their front porches or their side porches, screened-in porches, just humming them, you know. And it just became a part of it. It was just an everyday thing for me. And then went to a school where I was just surrounded by that culture on a regular basis. So I sang in the choir in school, in college, and we would sing things by Bach, Beethoven, Vivaldi, but you could not have a chapel service without singing a spiritual. And matter of fact, what made us even nervous is, I'm gonna tell you, he can make you nervous. Oh, that's not it. Anyway, William Dawson was retired when I was in college, but he was still kind of nosing around the campus. You know, some people don't know how to go home. And he would show up about every 2 to 3 Sundays and sit on the fourth pew. You did not sit on his pew. He didn't tell you to move. People just knew not to sit there. And he was just brilliant, you know, but we sang his pieces and he would always show up when we were singing his pieces, which was kind of nerve-wracking. But so I just couldn't get away with it. What I wanted to do was show how it became an art form for the world. And that's why I came up with this idea.
All right, anybody else?
I hope that answered it.
Oh, yes.
I'm an alum of the illustrious Oakwood Adventist University.
Oh, yes.
And so when I saw a picture of
Ella Shepherd, you said who's? I didn't hear you. Speak. I did. Oh.
Anyway, one of our founders, it's okay. One of our founders was Ellen G. White, and she was one of the pioneers of our faith. And she founded Oakwood University for enslaved people once they were free.
Right.
And so walking that campus was a beautiful experience to see where Evie Dykes, we have a library named after her, and she was one of the founders as well. So as a future, hopefully, Aeolian choir of the world in, I would say 2018 or 2015 in Russia. Spirituals are very important to me, and I don't play when it comes to my Jesus, and when it comes to the music, it's worship. So I feel it's very disrespectful when youth, especially, they think it's a joke. They think it's a game. They just sing it because their parents forced them to. Their grandma and their grandpa forced them to go to church, and they don't really care about what they're saying. They're hearing, but they're not listening.
Right.
And if they would just open up their hearts and listen to the words that they're saying, that's so impactful.
Yes.
And I think if we would all just open up our hearts and listen to what things that we're singing, they're all so impactful. So I'm very grateful to be part of the culture. I'm Trinidad and Guyanese, so all the back in the day hymns I grew up hearing from my grandmother and my grandfather. So I'm very grateful to be a part of a culture that has such a rich history and beautiful, beautiful culture.
I also want to add too, I've been on her campus, Oakwood's campus, several times, and the colleges also sang in festivals for each other. And the Oakwood choir was so fine, when they came in the room, everybody just got a little nervous. It was not supposed to be a competition. Yeah, but everybody got, her name was Miss Alma. Her first name was Alma. Yes, their first name was Alma. So, but I know a lot about that tradition, and thank you so much for bringing that up. We have the same background.
Why don't we do one thing? I noticed some students need to go to the next class. That's fine if you have another class. I think we'll just stick around for a couple of minutes.
I got all day.
Questions, because obviously a lot of people are very interested. And I have a question over here, so.
Thank you for coming.
So I recognize oh. So I recognize that a lot of this presentation starts post-slavery. I like to recognize that a lot of like the hymn stuff prior to that, like spirituality, a lot of the rhythms that we use that we still hear today, like Afrobeat music. A lot of those rhythms are still been passed down from generations to generations. My second, that was just more so like a statement, but my question is more so, I didn't hear you mention the first African Baptist church in Savannah, Georgia, where they have the holes in the floor.
Yes, I've been there once. Matter of fact, you from Savannah? Oh, Savannah State. Yes, this particular congregation is studied by historians nationwide, because they still have the holes in the floor and everything. I've only been there once, and it was very upsetting. They wouldn't let us see the whole place. Yeah, but yes, I do know about it. Yes. There.
Any other questions or for our speaker? How about online? Do we have anything online? One question? Okay, Stephen, I'll give you the mic.
All right, the first question here is actually two questions. I think they're so related to the mind in here. In what ways does spiritual serve a form of resistance or resilience for African Americans during the era of slavery? And in what way can the legacy of spirituals be used as a tool for contemporary social justice?
Oh, okay. So you're saying in what forms they were used?
Just in what ways?
Say what?
In what ways? So.
In what ways? Also to get the message across that they were getting ready to get out of there too. That's one of the main ones. I call them also escape music. Yeah, I call it escape music. So that's one of the ways. But also a sense of community, a sense of hope. That was one of the only ways that they could achieve hope, and also to make their community as cohesive as possible. You got to do something when you never know if a relative is going to be shipped off as cargo somewhere else, So you've got to have something to hold on to. This is American literature. So as a part of social justice, I believe in making it a point of preaching it as social justice. It's because it's American literature. When people tell me that's your culture, it came from my diaspora, but you saw only 2 Black faces in the group at the Atlanta Master Chorale singing one of the pieces that I grew up singing that was arranged by him. So that's the way I see it. I mean, it bothers me that this may be a part of the abolishment of DEI, because this is American history. So to abolish DEI, you're abolishing a part of American history. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Again, sense of community. If you know that lift every voice and sing, sense of community. You will find that particular hymn now in most hymnals, regardless if the denomination is predominantly black or white. Again, American culture. I hope I answered that.
We have a question here.
How would you sort of elaborate and explain how a lot of our rhythms, spirituals that we have, most of them tend to originate from tonic scales?
Yes.
And so how would you go about showing how over time we've sort of moved on the influence of classical music appealing to the white audience has brought us to the octet?
I wish I had a keyboard and I would play a pentatonic scale for you, so I'm so sorry. But yes, what she's basically saying is a type of scale that came from the Mother Africa, okay, which was used not just in, you would hear it in jazz, all of these things, you know, I mean, the spiritual birthed jazz and blues, and don't forget gospel. Because some people you'll see some denominations it's just strictly gospel, and sometimes I want to ask, do you know where it came from? Yeah, exactly. So it can be very frustrating, you know, when it's just a steady diet of one. I think I answered part of your question. I'm not sure. It struck a nerve because it's something that I complain about all the time, you know. But yeah, you just brought up something very important about that pentatonic scale, another cultural retention. And if you want to learn something more about cultural retentions, everybody needs to take this man's class. Because I mean, if anybody left that class not knowing more things about cultural retentions than they bargained for, they just didn't show up. It is a wonderful opportunity to learn again about American culture. It may be called African American history, but it is American history. It's music history, not just Black music history.
Because we have to remember that Black history is American history.
Of course.
Black history is global history. Black history is history, period.
Yeah.
Just thinking about that. People try to erase the DEI, abolished, dissolved, whatever you want to call it. They're trying to erase history. And we've seen that again and again. But those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. But
Well, let the church say amen to that. Exactly. Yeah.
one question I wanted to ask was, I love spirituals are sung in the minor key.
Yes.
I find the minor key to be so somber and
That's what he was saying just yesterday. Yeah.
it's beautiful and I can't. Sorry, please right now. Right. Okay, 2-6. And so I love the minor key. But when we speak about the minor key, when we hear it, we feel kind of sad, you know, because it is solemn, it is dark. But then when we hear the major key, it happy, it's bright, it's airy. If I think of the minor key as color, I think of blood red. Oh, blood red.
Oh, okay. A good way of looking at it. Yeah.
If I were to think of the major key, I would think of yellow, the color of the sun. The sun. And so the combination of the major and the minor keys, we separate them so much as if they're different parts of music, which they kind of are. It's like a push and pull, and which one is better? They coexist because they're all part of the same piano.
Yeah.
They're all part of the same, all octaves are part of the same piano from,
Right.
from 1 to 8 or 1 to 10. But they're all part of the same piano, just as we are all part of one family. And we forget that.
Yeah. Great.
I think we got time for one more, and we'll leave it with the online folks.
Our last question is, in what directions do you see spiritual moving in the contemporary scene and going forward? Give me thoughts on that.
When I look at, I'm glad you asked that question. When I look at these women at Spelman College, that tells me it's moving and it's here to stay. Because Dr. Johnson, who is their director, is arranging that type of music. He's making it sound contemporary, but also preserving the cultural retentions. I see it moving in that way because also, and I'm watching this is very addictive. I'm telling you now. I forgot how many millions of hits it's gotten. The first time I watched it, I think I probably just kept pulling it up, maybe about 15 more times. Now I've seen it 15 times, but I can't stop. Exactly. And it's gotten to the point of children go where I send thee. They cannot do a Christmas concert without doing that piece. They know they're going to catch it if they don't. You know, and so the reason why I think it's moving in this direction to stick around for a while is because PBS did a concert of them, and all of the pieces they did were in that style. So I was quite happy. There's another composer who's passed on now, Moses Hogan, who died way too soon. He was composing just a little bit more in a fresh contemporary style as well. So I think it's here to stay, especially with the abolishment of certain parts of history.
All right. Thank everybody so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I think it concludes our event. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Oh, my goodness.